Right, good evening. I'm calling to order the Independent Ethics Review Task Force this Monday, April 29th at 6 p.m. Right, do we have any public comments?
We have no one signed up.
Okay, perfect. Minutes. So the consideration of an action on the minutes for the April 8th, 2024 meeting. Do we have any changes, edits? Comments?
No comments, sir.
Can I get a motion to approve?
Motion.
Great.
Second.
All in favor of approving minutes? Aye. Minutes are approved. Next item is our workshop review of and discussion on the proposed revisions, the Code of Ethical Conduct. And unless anyone is opposed, I would recommend that we actually start with the misuse and disclosure because it's a short section. Let's knock that out, go through that, and then get into the one that's a little bit more involved. So it is section. As I pull my team. Section 2-83 of our Code of Ethical. Current section is an official or former official must not use confidential information, including information obtained during a closed meeting as defined by VTCA Government Code Chapter 551, obtained formally or informally due to his or her position with the city for his or her own benefit or for the benefit of any other person or entity, or make such information available in a manner where it would be reasonably foreseeable that a person or entity would benefit from it. So initial comments, thoughts, questions. Have some observations. We have samples from the city of Austin, Dallas, Round Rock, Plano, McKinney, San Angelo, and the state employee section as well.
Does the former official timeline, is that the 24 months? Or... But the rest of the document usually considers.
It's silent to a time frame, this particular section. That's an interesting question. Does this section, are you asking, does this mean while in office or while?
Is that so 2 years, like some of the other stuff at the
Sections 2-85 references former officials. So that section should be read in conjunction, I believe, with 2-83.
Yeah, so let's say.
We're going to check it out. So let's just take it out. 285, we say. So it's covering 285.
Well, 285 is only former, are you saying where it says an official or former official, you're suggesting strike the former part of it?
Just like the former official.
Yep, I mean, it is duplicative. Now, does it matter, not being proficient in chapter 551? Does the information in that chapter, is it different than what's in 285? Is basically my question.
283, we're saying you can't do anything that benefits you. 285, it says you can't do anything that benefits you for 13 months.
So 551 is an executive session. So when you had your appeal, 551 is executive session. So when you had your appeal and you went back, or you had your I'm sorry, getting my names confused. When you had your hearings and you went into the council dining room with your attorney, that is what 551 is. That's what this is referring to.
Okay. So it's saying specifically. Well, no, that's saying including, so it's not just that information, that it's just calling that out. So if you're in a closed session, you may not use that information or any other confidential information that you would have access to. So for former officials or pertaining to former officials, is there something that is restrictive in 283 that is not restrictive in 285? Because Steve's recommendation would be to strike the or former official so that 283 is just current officials and former officials are addressed in 285. Because I do agree, if it's fully addressed in 285, it's duplicative.
Right.
So I guess the only difference is, 283, I think it's about both official and confidential information, whereas the restriction in 285 appears to be only confidential information.
If I can chime in, I'm gonna agree with Andrew that 283 is for your personal benefit. And 285 is more just general, it isn't narrow to just your own personal benefit, whereas 283 is.
That's 285 addresses just city council. Right?
Yes, sir.
The 283 is an official, I'm assuming is inclusive of. Yes. Right? So the redundancy would not be there, that should not be stricken.
Would you see the samples that you liked?
So the one thing that I noted that for discussion, I don't know that it's a necessity, but I liked it, is the improper access. So home through briefly our code, but it didn't seem like that there was a section in our code where it says, okay, hey, you can't use your position to gain access to something that that's other than the purpose of your official responsibilities. I think about this, and this is completely a different example, like healthcare, but it's like a PHI, right? Like you can only access patient information if it's pertaining to what you're doing at that time in your job. You can't just go look at your neighbor's records and things like that. So that in my mind, that's how I applied the misuse of information or improper access is going and looking at city documentation that may be confidential, but it's not pertaining to whatever you're voting on, whatever your business is at hand. I don't know if that's a scenario that would come up, that somebody would have access to.
Police reports.
Okay. So I mean, I thought that was a good value add that we, want to make sure that there's not an abusive position and using it to access things that are not pertaining to whatever your business at hand is. What are your thoughts? Andrew, Doug, and Steve. One through you, I can just lift you out.
To me, yeah.
I'll go back to Andrew's first question is, portfolio official. Is there a statute of limitations, so to speak?
Just an 85, but not 80.
Right.
There should probably,
Yeah, but I like Steve, 85 just says city council.
so there should be something in 83 to address some sort of timeline.
Looking at example.
285 is that substantially different than 283. Except it says 13 months.
I'm looking at other examples to see. If anyone has other, timeframe limitations. I mean, is the assumption, as it's written currently, is the assumption that as long as the information is confidential or anything that you've had access to that like perpetuity, like unless the information, I guess, becomes public.
That's the way it's written.
I mean, that's what it sounds like.
Is there stuff that the city does that has to remain confidential? Obviously, EMS reports, stuff like that, police reports, not so much. But is there business that the city does that has to remain? Okay.
Well, one example would be like we're negotiating with the Astros for various amendments to the lease. They will provide us different financial statements. And the same thing with Smart Financial, when we're dealing with the Ambassador Group. They also provide us with their financials. We're not allowed by any means to disclose what their financials are. Now, different, and that's an ongoing type situation. Other situations would be an economic development negotiation where we're trying to get a certain company here. They'll give us our financials and we're still going back and forth as far as different negotiations. Once that deal is done, obviously the financials are going to continue to change. There's no ongoing responsibility to update that. Whereas with Smart and the baseball stadium, there are ongoing obligations on both sides to keep things updated. So there is a potential that some of these will always be confidential. And security measures, certain security measures we have throughout the buildings, certain rules, terms, language, emergency plans. Those are all going to be perpetually confidential as well.
So some of the limitations on 283 and 285. So that kind of information, but more is addressing the financial benefits of information that they get.
That's just what 285B, right, is the financial interest. I think 285A is speaking more just about confidentiality.
Mhm.
So like section A is very much in alignment with 283 as far as just the restricting the ability to disclose confidential information. I think B is where it goes into the financial interest and the
But 283 also, when they talk about for the benefit or the other, so it seems that they both, you know something, don't say something. If you can make money off what you know, you can't.
I mean, I don't want to discuss the 85, but it kind of, it's for greater pay, we're discussing it too much right now. Why put a time limit on it? Where did 13 months come from? Who pulled 13 months? So you guys,
So you're gonna, I think we were looking at 24 months, and the discussion was that at what point can the city say you can't make money off of what you did here? So if you restricted it for 2 years, the feeling was that that's too long to keep somebody getting a job.
you have to, you get a job, you just, when you get a job, you just can't get a job that's.
So the original discussion was, let's say, I'm a city council, and we approve contract with a certain company. We're no longer city council. Should be able to just jump over to that company and get a job or a no-show job. And the same was that if a company was doing work for the city, that so the project manager, they couldn't put in a really complicated system and then go to the city after it's installed and go, you got to hire me to make sure that system runs. So we wanted there to be a barrier. Yeah, I'll take care of you, you take care of Big Pro in terms of giving contracts and getting hired or getting contracts and then coming to work for the city.
Is your question though, like 13 months versus like 24 months versus 12 months? It is an odd,
13 months versus
Yeah.
other months, because you're giving somebody rent for. This is the balance, 13 months is about long the time.
I was really enjoying 24 months.
So 4 months, I think is more appropriate. You don't want to give anybody an unfair business advantage over somebody else should have the position in the city. And I think 13 months is still, we plug that into 2-03. You know, do we plug 13 months? Do we plug anything?
What do we, remember being,
stay.
right, confidential has to stay confidential forever. But a financial benefit,
What's the penalty? What's the penalty?
to
You all decide. How the complaint is filed, you all assess the penalty.
right. And then, so once somebody's out of the office. Okay, we're on call, we're already going.
So we're not gonna make this thing perfect, and there's always gonna be.
And we go back and change to, you know, instead of 13 months, the equal to the amount for the last term. Something like that. So you serve 3 years, you can't come play for 3 years. If you served 18 months and then resigned. I don't want to be it's,
I think 24 months is a reasonable amount of time.
What do we do for other, I mean, there's other sections like cooling off period, right, where you can't do business.
Those we wanted 24 months also.
Representation is a period of 2 years.
I just think consistency would be good.
And nobody's, really everybody's examples, I don't think anybody's given it time.
Yeah.
I mean, see around like that, like those rates, the city officials should not have to disclose to the public any information as to confidential under any federal, state, local law, or council rules, but there's.
So that's, I mean, I probably have a very unpopular opinion. I think this entire antecedent could be stricken because you're not supposed to release confidential information, full stop, like do not disclose. But I mean, I understand why it was included and why it's in there, but I mean, if it were me, if the sections for use and disclosure of confidential information, it doesn't matter why you accessed it or why you disclosed it, you're not supposed to.
So see around right now, so, in, you know. Number 2, I mean, it's to the point. And we go into closed meetings in the ethics board, we're not supposed to say anything outside of closed meeting. I mean, that's, yes.
It was many years ago that this document was created. And there were points where we would say we want this, and city council would go, we will accept that. So it could have been a situation like we asked for 24 months, and they said, we want 0. You know, like that, we just split it. And we get 1 extra. I don't remember, but I know there have been times in the original document and other times when we asked for changes where city council who ultimately okays the document pushed back and it could come from there. No, I agree. I should think.
And again, it's not gonna be perfect.
Yeah, if I were writing it from scratch, like just completely, I would have it like, I love how Groundhog does the 2-part, but I would have it access or use, whatever you would call it, use or access, number 1, and disclosure number 2. So you're not supposed to access or use something that you don't have a business purpose for, you're not supposed to be looking at. And number 2, then you don't disclose anything that's confidential. Like I feel like, and I'm not opposed to leaving it in there. I understand why there's added language, but I feel like the whole purpose is don't access something you're not supposed to, and don't disclose confidential information.
Easy as that. Times will make it too complicated.
And I'm sure it's probably like scenario based where you're like, okay, we want to make sure they're not using it for their.
The concept of discussion ideas where, you know, we hire a company. City, you know, the city council Bruce company to come in and put a whole new video system in. nobody from city council could go work for that company for 2 years after that contract is done. But we didn't want, so what I had seen is one of the local hospital. One of the local hospitals. The software upgrade. So many problems. 2 of the employees who worked on the software upgrade went to the hospital and said, well, if you hire us full time, we'll keep your system running. So not only did the company put millions of dollars in revenue
Implementation.
for purchasing the software, now the 2 people that were in charge of installing it had full-time jobs with the state to maintain it. That doesn't sound right. We're sure that someone from city council will be able to go in. I'll take care of you, and when I'm out, you take care of me. And that's probably why we have the benefit. And the financial benefit or financial interest. So if we redo 283 to more like Round Rock, then we make sure 285 includes
And I mean,
benefit
like,
and financial.
from our perspective, I think like item 1 is a little too short, like. Nobody's gonna know the reference section and what it says, you know, and that doesn't tell you what it is, that's not helpful.
That's why I just referenced it too. I mean, yeah, 1 is to,
Yeah, usually it's like use and access. Don't use your position to access something you're not supposed to have access to. And number 2, then would just be, if it's confidential, don't disclose it. In much more nice language.
More expensive. And then we make sure that 285 is we're making money on any of this stuff.
for 24 months.
Yeah, I don't mind, go ahead and recommending the 13 to be, I know we're not really like dissecting that section. It's like, it's a comparison,
What do we have?
but we can already take it down. I don't disagree with the 24 months. And if it's consistent with what we put in other sections of the code, that's, my whole thing is consistent, like,
Sure.
it makes it easier too to enforce and to understand and what can you do, what can't you do?
So you wanted 24 months, and 13 months was negotiation,
I believe so.
but I'd say we bring it back to 24 months.
No negotiation for 36 and agreed 24.
Well, if we can cite where it's all for 24 months. It's not, if the message is not, we're not trying to further the limitation, we're trying to make it more enforceable and easily understood that it's a consistent 24 months across the board. I think that's.
Does that stand up in court, like legally, when we say you can't go do that? Particularly with the Supreme Court and striking down, that's not non-compete, you go wherever you want, as long as you didn't find them through us in here.
We're not preventing anybody from going over. If anybody else, someone really have a conflict of interest, where they.
Right, with that,
Yeah, I mean, that's a non-compete is different.
really,
Okay. That's different. So 24 months is good on both, what was it, 83 and 85?
Well, 83 is probably just, I don't know, I feel like it has to be agnostic to the time frame because as long as the information, and maybe that's the. Maybe that's the new like preposition at the end, as long, I said antecedent earlier, I meant preposition anyways. But as long, I just realized that, as long as the information is deemed to be confidential.
Okay, fair enough. But it's interesting that one of the examples that you pulled out. I think, I don't recall reading it has any timeline, they're all just.
Can't do it.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
I think we understand that, so. Whether it's us or city council, anyone you're elected, no one's getting paid to do this. And we didn't want to get in a situation where we're stopping somebody from the future being able to make money. It just has to be clean.
Influence, we just don't. I mean, it's all about influence.
Appearance of impropriety would be a fantastic term to use. In this case,
One of these days.
yeah, for 24 months, you have to have an appearance of.
Do we have any other thoughts, comments around this particular section? I still think, Steve, that we do take 280, we'll go ahead and take down the 24-month suggestion, but I think we still look at that and benchmark it against some other sections. And maybe that's one of the things we start with next time, since it's top of mind.
And when we present any changes to city council, it's imperative that we constantly remind them that this isn't a document targeting them exclusively. This covers all of the volunteers on boards, commissions. And that,
We're not trying to hold anyone to a standard that we're not held to as well.
and that. And we're not saying it's you who can't do it, it's us who can't do it. I think the longer this document exists, the more open-minded they'll be.
You see what your mind was, a big pushback last time we went through houses at city council. I mean, it's kind of gone off track a little bit.
Yeah, when we said the appearance of impropriety, they didn't like that. It's too long a term. Yet,
But that wasn't in the complete overhaul either, right? I mean, not that this is an overhaul, but that was like a section specific discussion versus like, we're redlining the entire document.
Going out of bounds here, or are we okay?
I can't comment to this.
We can go ahead and move forward to the next item or the next section. How about that?
Discussion for another day.
but the more the document is used, the more I understand its purpose.
The 24 months, like, let's make it all consistent. Let's keep it easy to apply and enforce. Okay,
And remember, we're an independent. Nation.
Correct, and
We have no,
focus is on keeping them happy.
that's right. We have no agenda here other than doing the right thing.
Changes of the ethics committee is the ones who approve the documents.
so did you have anything else on this section? I want to make sure we,
No, good. I do agree with the 21 months, trying to be consistent. If that's the case, from what I understand, that's the case.
right, do we want to move into abstention? And unlike use of disclosure, I'm not reading this entire section out loud. Um, 2-79, sorry, Andrew. This is on stating the anticipation or discussion of a vote. If you are, conflicted out. And, I have a quick question. So on A(1), where it says acting on a matter, failing to act on a matter may personally and financially benefit the official or official's relative. We define that in the conflict of interest section, right? So we don't need to actually digest or dissect that, because that's the whole purpose of the conflict of interest section.
Mhm.
The official and the official's relative, yeah.
Yes, and in the fact that like what's financially benefit or personally benefit, I mean, all of that is the reason I'm asking and saying this is that's a different section to like dive into. So that's not really, this is just kind of generally or broadly referring back to, but everything's defined specifically in the conflict of interest section. So when we're looking at abstention, we should look at probably like the time frame, And like the actual procedural items underneath it, where you have to leave the room and can you discuss it with somebody or not? I'm just saying, we don't want to go down the conflict of interest discussion. We do want to go down there, but just not in this section.
I will tell you, before you take up too much time,
Mhm,
that this is state law.
mhm,
The only thing that the ethics board has added was the leaving the room
mhm.
and the suggestion of resigning in paragraph E.
Mm,
Everything else is state law.
Even, is that verbatim, state law?
That is not part of local government code chapter 171 and 176,
Okay.
but it is a pretty standard term of art for just about any board procedure, is that once you have too many that are abstained, you can't conduct business, and so this is the exception to allow them to continue.
In 12 months preceding. State, okay. And we can increase that, we can go less than.
Certainly can't go less. I don't know.
Okay.
If this be for the most recent. That's- yeah, I don't know.
Well, I just thinking about changing that to 24 months as well. I don't know.
already undermining my argument.
But that's totally different.
I know.
Mhm.
There was some language and I'll have to refer, I'm looking for it, but we do have. And I'm not saying we need to change it, I'm just calling it out as a discussion area. If I recall correctly, we say something that you have to file it as soon as possible.
Mhm.
And I did note that some of the other cities said like within 3 business days or within a certain time period. I just wanted to call it out because it was a difference.
Yeah, so it's 79 D.
Yes.
As far as,
Just as soon as possible.
as far as discussion, paragraph C. Why don't we give a reason as to the abstention? I mean, it just simply says, recording the Board of Council, which serves, period. Don't you think it should give a reason as to why that's?
So you can't do it. You do it.
So you would suggest possibly adding language that says. Making this up, abstention of an official will be recorded in the minutes and audio recording of the respective board of council which he serves, comma, including, or minutes to include. Basis for abstention.
I like it. So we're going to. Why we're saying.
I sit back and do it, why,
So we're taking up against the company.
To your point, I assume that that's how it would be documented, that you would include that, but if it's not declared that it has to be documented that way,
just.
If you wanted to look at the copy of the state law, it is page 19 of 42 of your March 18th agenda. If you just happen to be bored and wanted to see what it looks like. And this is more so the gift section, but it does have a lot of the similar languages and some of these items requirement.
Okay, I'm on 19 of 42. Can you help me focus my attention?
But this is just chapter 176.
Oh, I see it. Okay,
This is part from chapter 171 and 176, if you just wanted to have some reference.
thank you.
We can also get you a copy of 171 for the next meeting if you like. I was gonna provide that when you do the conflicts of interest section.
Yes. So this talks about like the questionnaire and the sections of the question that must be included in the conflict of interest form itself. I'm still skimming it. Are there any, would the minutes then reflect that the form has been filed?
No, that would be in chapter 171, which I haven't.
Okay, I'm sorry.
But, no, that's not a requirement of state law. You can certainly add that.
Okay. So where did we land on including the language? Like, that it should be documented in the minutes? I think that, I mean, I made the assumption, and if I'm making an assumption, I feel like it's fair to clarify. Andrew, Doug, do y'all have any opinions on that?
I could support, what Steve was saying, unless the implication is. If there's an assumption that it's going to be included. Anyway, but I have no problem with.
We know if that's current procedure.
I don't think I understood the question.
So, the recommendation is that we have, a little phrase after this that says, basically that it's got to be documented that the abstentions documented in the minutes and in the recording. But Steve was recommending that we add some sort of language that says, we have to document the reason that they abstained.
Sure, we can do that. I tell you that the charter right now states that a city council member cannot abstain from voting on any item unless they have a conflict of interest form filed. The Code of Ordinances has a provision that says that every board and commission member has to vote on the item unless they have a conflict of interest form filed. So if you want to ensure that that is followed through, you can put it here as well, in case those are ever changed. And then that would require the person to say, the chair would say, Madam Secretary, would you please note that Admiral Wolf is stepping out of the meeting. He has filed a conflict of interest form related to this item. Madam Secretary, please note that Mr. Wolf has now rejoined the meeting and we're moving to the next item. We can certainly add that.
And if we add what you like, things change in the sense that my son used to work for this company. And we're a different company now I can vote the next time this comes up, and it's clear as to why the person abstained before and why they'd be allowed to participate again.
Well, saying that. Would there be any confidentiality issues? In something like that then?
Conflict of interest forms are public by state law.
Good question.
All right, so that's,
So,
Just like adding, like including the basis for abstention. Or something fancy.
The word sporadic is used, is that state saying that?
More about Andrew, help me.
So 279.
No,
and hang on, let's finish,
Okay.
let's finish, see, I think we're all in agreement if we can add in a clause.
yeah, I think we're gonna have that.
great.
Sorry.
With a circle back person.
Something that helps.
So. We should be using expected to require a sporadic abstention. Do we use that term at least twice in the paragraph? Do we define?
So conceptually, I agree with E. As a whole. It's very gray. Like from an enforceability and a,
Not very specific. Right.
I agree.
Did you say that was state? Okay, it was not.
These are
Okay.
addition.
There's the concept of that paragraph.
The practicality, like you're saying, like, okay, you're an elected official, say you're a council member, and my job or my role is to be present and vote and provide action. And so if I'm consistently having to abstain because conflicts of interest across the board, then, you know, I'm not fulfilling my responsibility.
Every 2 weeks. That year, it's a 24 times a year. When do they?
Can we get an appreciation for how frequently this occurs?
How frequently someone has to abstain? It really just depends. For a while, the mayor had to abstain every time we did a park project because they were using half associates to do the design. Sometimes like, it does because like if we're gonna do like a major, like a, we had different reasons for people to have to abstain when we're negotiating over there for the Imperial property. At one point in time, we had a council member who belonged to a real estate group that made an investment. And he changed his investments and changed his investor and he no longer had a conflict. And then somebody bought property. So it's kind of fluid. And it's really a case by case basis. So there was a situation where he had abstained, I think, eight meetings in a row when the topic came up. But it was just by the pure craziness of having invested with somebody years before. That company had an arm that invested over here, and then they just happened to buy this property. And so it's not predictable.
Right.
But I wouldn't say that we have the same thing more than, aside from this one case. Maybe 3 or 4 times a year, the mayor does have to abstain whenever we do something with Centerpoint. But that's more because he does some networking work with them. And so that becomes a conflict.
We're not gonna base this on the frequency of.
No, I'm just trying to get an appreciation for how big of an issue is this, right? Like, you know, what kind of attention it warrants.
Be a huge issue next year.
Mhm.
So they would just recuse themselves on that issue, not, I mean, council deals with hundreds or thousands of issues and so it's not like, you know, we're asking a person to resign, which is pretty significant, or seek such outside employment.
It looks like the sporadic language is taken from the model code. So that's page 28 of your packet. or sorry, it appears on page 29, but the model code starts on page 28. And it's number 5 of page 29.
Mhm. This board, you would decide if it's more than sporadic, or. Is that,
I don't anticipate a complaint ever being made on this paragraph and sent to you all.
And it's also kind of why I was trying to gauge, because adding a percentage or a certain number, it's so case by case that I wouldn't even know what to like.
I don't anticipate a violation being found in this section. I think that if somebody wants to take the time to fill out that paperwork, they're gonna find something more significant.
So in that same paragraph. Why do we look at reasonably? In any type of ethic code, reasonably to me might be different than reasonably to you. It's just such a,
I agree, it was just copy and paste.
oh,
It was just copy and paste from the model code. I have no ownership and no pride. We're in that ownership, so.
it's just too subjective. I mean, it's just too, what is reasonably. But if nothing's gonna be filed against this paragraph, I guess it doesn't matter. So we move on to paragraph F. Are we okay with paragraph A?
I'm okay with it.
Accept it.
I don't like F.
Meaning if it's not gonna be,
You don't like to take it?
I agree.
If you don't like that paragraph, we can take it.
Well, it's, the only thing I like about that paragraph is at the end, but they may then vote.
Yeah,
I mean, if you've got a conflict and you don't have a quorum.
hey,
Oh, I'm sorry, I was talking about E.
no.
Sorry.
I was saying, but then I said, I'm really, yeah.
So we switch gears on.
Let's, yes. Okay. Yeah, I mean,
Would that person need to voice a no vote on the subject matter? And then what if there's a tie?
can you say that again, I missed.
What if the person, he should be a no vote on that topic, he shouldn't be able to vote, whether or no on vote. I don't know.
His or her best interest, and so,
That's a true statement also.
I think they should delay, if that happened, they should delay the vote until. People are without a conflict, they can vote.
This isn't, I was gonna say the state law.
It's state practice, yeah, but let me give you an example. Someone files a conflict of interest or files a complaint regarding somebody on this ethics board. Technically, every single one of you have a conflict of interest because that is a co-board member.
Right.
So now you all have to abstain. You cannot participate. Well, now I don't have anybody to hear this hearing. What are you gonna do? You're all gonna say, well, we have a conflict. Now, it's not a legal conflict under chapter 171, 106, so it's not a perfect example, but you're gonna say, having served on this board with this person for the last 5 years, I think they're an ethical, great person. We have all this, but you still have to be able to have a group of people to get together. I can't just randomly go out and pick a jury from the residents and handpick, every 10th address you're on my board now. So you would all have to be conflicted out, but yet now that all of you are conflicted out, at least a quorum of you would have to hear the complaint.
Can you give another example? Other than that?
Off the top of my head,
It's a pretty brutal.
well, but I mean, for that's the closest to home I could come up with for you, but there's gonna be situations. It's more likely to occur like in a small town, you know, this one company employs everybody and you're gonna vote on something for that one company.
You know where we're coming from. I mean, how can you have a conflict of interest in,
I understand, this,
like you said, no, like you don't keep it.
but you can't paralyze the government and not allow them to move forward. There has to be an ability to move the process forward. You cannot just come to a standstill until the next election. Some items must be voted on, sometimes actions must occur. And so by having that conflict of interest, you have to disclose it. You get up there and say, I'm conflicted, I'm conflicted, I'm conflicted. We've all admitted we're conflicted, but we still have to move forward with the business. But it's more of a small town type situation.
Are there voting options, yes, no, abstain, or just yes and no?
Well, this gets a little quirky because under their charter, it says the only reason you can abstain
Yeah.
is if you have a conflict. Well, the rule of necessity overrides that. It says that you've all got a conflict, you should all abstain, but now you can vote. I can tell you with or without the provision in this code, it will be enforced. If we have everybody conflicted out, I don't have a quorum and they have to vote, they're all gonna say, I'm conflicted for this reason, and then we're gonna get a quorum of them to vote. With or without the statement in here. So practices that they'll continue forward.
City budget has to be passed. It has to be.
What I was thinking of was somebody who, in a conflict, but caused certain members to miss a meeting for whatever reason, and they would take advantage of that to get their way.
In that situation, we would just table it.
Yeah.
And there would have to be a quorum of individuals at the meeting to vote on it. But this is a situation where all 7 of them, or at least 4 of them, are conflicted out that there's no way you can ever have a quorum.
So somebody who ran a situation where that had to take place. And a complaint was filed to ethics. And ethics looks at it and says, yeah, we understand why you had to vote.
It would never get to you, I'd cut it off.
That was an.
Operation of law.
Okay.
So hypothetically, if you had 4 individuals conflicted out, so you didn't have a quorum, do you not reinstate, I don't have the right terminology, but do all 4 of them, are they all back in, or just one to get your quorum? Because then that could sway the vote. You would would you just pick one of the 4 to get your quorum, or do you pick the whole 4 and then you have an imbalance of both possibly?
That's an excellent question. I don't have an answer for it.
I would say they'd all have.
On the fly,
all in.
yeah, on the fly, I would have said, okay, everybody sits there.
Right, but then
Because how do you pick which one?
but it's 4 and it's conflicted out from like a monetary perspective, they all stand to benefit and you let all of them back in, then that wins the vote automatically.
Your conflict is better than
Hypothetically, if you let all 4 back in, then they automatically get whatever their vote is.
I can tell you in the 24 years,
Never happened.
I've never seen it. And as an intern for 3 years, I never saw this.
Fine. So I was just curious if the rules ever all, so we all,
I don't know. That's a good question. I would think, as Mr. Earl said, it's all in. But how would you pick which one person? But if you want to delete it, we can delete it. It's just not going to matter whether it's there or not, and it will never come before you as a complaint. Because by operation of law, that's how it happens.
You know, I get what you're saying, Meredith, about. In my years, it's never happened,
Sure.
but.
There's always that opportunity.
Yeah, we gotta look at this, it's gonna happen.
Sure, but I will tell you that if the provision is here or not, by operation of law, that's what will happen. Is that if 4 of them are conflicted out, they will state their conflict and then we'll vote.
So if that's the case, I'd rather leave it so that if we get a complaint, we have a basis to like
It won't,
address the complaint.
Sure.
it won't get to you. By operation of law, that's what happened. They did advise the attorney.
Then do we want to delete it?
You okay to leave, say, keep it there, you want to lose it? You're the one that said you want.
Well, I mean, I understand point. Let's say is.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, so. I mean, if we delete it, if we delete it, what's gonna happen? Nothing.
That's what I'm,
We leave it in.
it's a document that don't matter. In my opinion, like, we don't need to add we have enough language in the document that, I mean, if it doesn't matter and it would never come to like. It would never rise to a complaint to our board, we would never see it, so we wouldn't need it in here, that would be my reference, like, I would want it in here so that I have a basis to complaint.
You would get an FYI and an email, this complaint has come in, they acted by operation of law. I would not even send it to you. It would not be considered a valid complaint.
The second sentence of it says the conflict, they must disclose the conflict on public record. That would have already occurred before we got to this. Like, so
It wouldn't know it was a conflict.
there's a conflict way before we got to this. I'm sorry, we don't want you to vote, but you have to vote. Right?
If you add the language that you had suggested for paragraph C. The basis for leaving.
Right.
Currently, the chair is supposed to say, you know, so-and-so filed a conflict, they'll be stepping out. But yes, they would all have to say, my conflict is my husband works there, my conflict is I own $100,000 worth of stock here. My conflict is that my father worked there, or my daughter works there. And they have to go down the line.
So members must disclose their conflict on public record, but they made that vote. I wouldn't take it out. If there wasn't someplace else that says if you have a conflict, you have to publicly state it. But I think it does say earlier in that paragraph, but if you have a conflict, you have to say it.
Yeah.
Right?
We're adding that.
So if you take out F. Just have to tell us if there's a conflict,
Yes.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, but it doesn't.
So if this were to occur, they would have to go down the road and say they have a conflict. So if 6 of the 7 have a conflict, the last one to say, I don't have a conflict. You are all, you know, in trouble. But they go down, they have to say that. And then we'll go, okay, rule of necessity, you're allowed to stay. And then we will state that it's due to the rule of necessity. We will invoke that rule. But they will have to go down the road and state specifically. On the conflict of interest, normally we just say you have a conflict filed and that's it. But they would have to say, you know, it's a relative, it's they would have to say what the specific conflict is for the rule of necessity to apply. It can't just be I filed the form.
Take it out.
I don't know about that.
Delete it.
You're right there.
You know, we're adding enough that if it doesn't matter one way or the other that it's in here, then it doesn't need to be in the document. It's my opinion.
I concur.
Do you want to leave E in as well? That's never going to come to you.
I would say keep E.
Yeah, let's keep E.
Is it common to have that? I'm looking through some of the examples. When you say, well, you know, obviously. Why we're having these great discussions.
I think it was most likely the model. I didn't see.
It doesn't look like it's a common. My 2 cents is if you can't hold somebody. Why does this never come to us?
As far as somebody has to consistently because this is gonna be more of a recall petition.
Mm.
Somebody's, because they could file a complaint with you and say, so-and-so doesn't show up there to do their job as a council member or as a planning and zoning commission member, and I don't like it, and I want you to do something. Okay, well, you say, yes, they didn't do that sporadically, they still have to get the numbers for a recall petition to remove the council member. If it's a board or commission member, the council still has to be the ones to remove them. But your ruling would have no basis. Because it would have, if the person is complaining the council member is not doing their job, the only way to remove them would be a recall petition. And if you all say you're right, they're not doing the job, you have to make that recommendation to city council, but somebody still has to get the votes to have a recall.
And you wouldn't need this board to make that recommendation. Is,
You can talk all day long, you can say, no, we don't think it's sporadic, yes, we think it's sporadic. But whoever's filing the complaint, the proper remedy for them would be a recall petition.
I'm team delete. But I, just on the same argument of. If we don't have the authority to hold someone accountable to a standard that's in the code, then why is it in the code? So, and it's not like we as a board, but like, if there aren't accountability considerations for a section where.
Well, and sometimes the language in here was added to kind of give you give people guidelines. This is the conduct that is expected of you. And this is just a suggestion. We think you should.
Okay.
And so there's language throughout here that is more suggestive than mandatory, just as kind of to show this is the path, the moral standards that your residents are expecting you to walk. That said, I don't care if it's there or not.
Yeah, I don't have strong feelings about it, so
Yeah, I say keep it in, Tom, I think it's.
I'm okay with keeping it personally.
he stays.
And you-
Oh, I think Audie already said he would stay.
I'd rather keep it and not use it. And have it there as a reminder. To do this. Then. Absolutely, nobody said I couldn't.
Other comments about abstention, suggestions, points of clarification.
For me,
So I do think that 285 is a natural continuation. But I'm not certain that that's enough. Like, I feel like we need another section in addition to that. We want to look at misuse of city, have we already looked at misuse of city property? I don't have my master in front of me.
No.
But I think we at least have that one in addition to 285.
So 285 and 286?
Julie, do you think that's enough for next time?
You also have the red lines to go.
Okay, yes, perfect. And we'll include the red lines for next meeting, and that'll be great. Hopefully we'll have a wider participation. We can kind of get everyone up to speed and on the same page. Any final comments, thoughts?
Just FYI, I've talked to Meredith about this, I can only come on the first and fifth Mondays if we needed this hour, so. Today's the fifth Monday, so I was able to come. The next one would be the third.
Is the next scheduled meeting May 27th
It'd be May 20,
or May 20th?
27th, so all day.
Oh. Not having holiday together.
Throw some burgers in the microwave or something.
Is there a specific, is it a Monday?
Yeah, Mondays at 6. You know, this committee does not revolve around, I'm just saying, you know, you want more participation.
If you were in today, I would have a meeting. It's got to
Able to,
If we could do it, you know. Earlier, but you know, that's hard for people, so. Hopefully others can come. But,
Is there a different day of the week that works better for everybody? We haven't had Rachel or Larry yet, and so perhaps switching to another day might
right,
bring them along too.
I'm open to moving. The only day that I can't do from like a day of the week perspective is a Tuesday.
Tuesday's not good for me as well as we have our board meetings.
City council meetings.
Yeah, I'm the only one.
And if it's not city council, it's P and Z, so no, Tuesdays are not happening for us.
It's Wednesday work for you?
From a city standpoint, is there a particular?
Wednesday,
You just-
Tuesday's better, or Tuesday, Thursday, right?
Well, no, I mean, Wednesdays, yes, but we would have to work it out. We'll look at a calendar. You may no longer be every third week, it may be every 4 weeks or every 2 weeks. Because we have, charter committee. And every other Wednesday, it's charter commission, which actually we just wrapped them up. After next week, hey, we have every other Wednesday at 5 is now open. So we do have that available. But then the other conflict would be 4B and ZBA. Which only occurs one Wednesday of the month. So if Wednesday works better for you all,
That's fine, we'll just stick to 6 o'clock though, that's.
just replace charter with this.
At 6 or?
At 6 or do we have 5?
5 is a little challenging for me.
That's a challenge.
6 is okay, yeah, I volunteer till 5, so 6.
6 be good for me, Wednesdays?
Wednesdays at 6.
And then, not next meeting, but just as an aside, I think we were scheduled for the week of the. Hold on,
The second Wednesday of the month.
the June 10th week. I'm just out of the country, just doesn't listen.
Here we go. Oh my God.
Do you want to stay on that 3-week schedule? Do you want to move to a 4-week schedule, but a 2-week schedule, wrap this up quickly? What works better for you all?
Just not the second Wednesday.
That's fine, 4 weeks is fine too.
It's just easier for us to lock down a room once we have a schedule. And it's okay, we do whatever you need.
Cadence has been fine. I feel like
But is that
2's gonna be a little bit frequent.
3?
But then every couple months, we're gonna run into a issue where we don't have a room, because you'll have 4B and ZBA. 4B will be in here and ZBA will be there. Really, we have issues with that.
Right, I mean, you have conflict of interest, which is gonna be a big one.
But let's just go and then we'll chart it out.
Okay,
And then when it's a Wednesday, it's a problem, we'll just say, hey, guess what? We're gonna go 4 weeks this time.
okay.
Just so that we can
Okay,
have a room.
that's fair.
Well, if we ever need to send polling stuff out again, whatever, you know.
Oh, Brandon's really good at that. So, okay, so Brandon comes back tomorrow. Things will be much more put together for you all. And I understand that the next board meeting, we're gonna go over 285, 286, and I will figure out how to save the red lines, or Brandon will save them when they actually show up. As opposed to however I know when they didn't show. And we will be meeting on a Wednesday at 6 p.m. 22nd. Possibly May 22nd, but we need to check to see if that's 4B and ZBA and we will send out an appointment boost to make sure.
Sounds like a plan,
When you close, after you close the meeting, we'll make an invitation.
do I have a motion to adjourn?
The motion?
Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye, meeting adjourned.